Hello, welcome back to i-TUTOR NCERT series. Today, we are going to discuss Class 11 Geography NCERT Fundamentals of Physical Geography, Chapter 14 Biodiversity and Conservation. Let's start. Biodiversity is a system in constant evolution from a viewpoint of species as well as from viewpoint of an individual organism. The average half-life of a species is estimated at between 1 and 4 million years, and 99% of the species that have ever lived on the earth are today extinct. Biodiversity is not found evenly on the earth. It is consistently richer in the tropics. As one approaches the polar regions, one finds larger and larger populations of fewer and fewer species. Biodiversity itself is a combination of two words. Bio means life and diversity means variety. So in simple terms, biodiversity is the number and variety of organisms found within a specified geographic region. So what is the definition of biodiversity? It is the number and variety of organisms found within a specified geographic region. It refers to the varieties of plants, animals and microorganisms as genes they contain and the ecosystem they form. It relates to the variability among living organisms on the earth, including the variability within and between the species and that within and between the ecosystem. Now, biodiversity is our living wealth. It is a result of hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary history. And biodiversity can be discussed at three levels. The first one is genetic diversity, second one species diversity, and third one ecosystem diversity. So, genetic diversity. Genes are the basic building blocks of various life forms. Genetic biodiversity refers to the variation of genes within species. Groups of individual organisms having certain similarities in their physical characteristics are called species. Okay, so what are called species? The group of individual organisms. They have certain similarities in their physical characteristics. These are called species. Human beings genetically belongs to Homo sapiens group and also differ in their characteristics such as height, color, physical appearances, etc. considerably. This is due to genetic diversity. Okay, so these characteristics, that is the height, color and physical appearances, these are some of the genetic diversity of human beings. This genetic diversity is essential for a healthy breeding of population of species. Second one is species diversity. This refers to the variety of species, relates to the number of species in a defined area. The diversity of species can be measured through its richness, abundance and types. Okay, so the diversity of species, they can be measured through the richness, abundance and types. Some areas are more rich in species than others. So areas rich in species diversity are called hotspot of the diversity. Okay, so in some areas there is more rich in species diversity and these areas are known as hotspot or diversity. Now third one, ecosystem diversity. The broad differences between ecosystem types and the diversity of habitat and ecological process occurring within each ecosystem type constitute the ecosystem diversity. The boundaries of communities, association of species and ecosystems are not very rigidly defined. Thus, the demarcation of ecosystem boundaries is difficult and complex. Now, what are the importance of biodiversity? Biodiversity has contributed in many ways to the development of human culture, and in turn, human communities have played a major role in shaping the diversity of nature at the genetic, species and ecological level. Biodiversity plays the following roles, that is ecological, economic and scientific. First one, the ecological role of biodiversity. Species of many kinds perform some functions or the other in an ecosystem. So every species have some functions in the ecosystem. Nothing in an ecosystem evolves and sustains without any reason. That means every organism, besides extracting its needs, also contributes something of the useful to the other organism. Okay. Species capture and store energy, produce and decompose organic materials, help to cycle water and nutrients throughout the ecosystem. Okay, so every species have their own roles on the ecosystem and some of them fix atmospheric gases and help regulate the climate. So these functions are important for ecosystem functions and human survival. Okay, so these are important for the ecosystem to function, and it also helps to the human survival. The more diverse an ecosystem, better are the chances for the species to survive through adversities and attacks, and consequently is more productive. Hence, the loss of species would decrease the ability of the system to maintain itself. Just like a species with a high genetic diversity, an ecosystem with high biodiversity may have a great chance of adapting to environmental change. In other words, the more the variety of species in an ecosystem, the more stable the ecosystem is likely to be. Now, economic role of biodiversity. For all humans, biodiversity is an important resource in their day-to-day life. One important part of biodiversity is crop diversity, which is also called agrobiodiversity. Biodiversity is seen as a reservoir of resources to be drawn upon for the manufacture of food, pharmaceutical, and cosmetic products. This concept of biological resources is responsible for the deterioration of biodiversity. At the same time, it is also the origin of new conflicts dealing with the rules of divisions and the appropriation of natural resources. Some of the important economic commodities that biodiversity supplies to humankind are food crops, livestock, forest, fish, medicinal resources, etc. Now, scientific role of biodiversity. Biodiversity is important because each species can give us some clue as to how life evolved and will continue to evolve. Biodiversity also helps in understanding how life functions and the role of each species in sustaining ecosystems of which we are also a species. This fact must be drawn upon every one of us so that we live and let other species also live in their lives. It is our ethical responsibility to consider that each and every species along with us have an intrinsic right to exist. Hence, it is morally wrong to voluntarily cause the extinction of any species. The level of biodiversity is a good indicator of the state of our relationship with other living species. In fact, the concept of biodiversity is an integral part of many human cultures. Now, loss of biodiversity. Since the last few decades, growth in human population has increased the rate of consumption of natural resources. It has accelerated the loss of species and habitation in different parts of the world. Tropical regions, which occupy only about 1/4 of the total area of the world, and they contain about 3/4 of the world human population. Okay, so the tropical region have only about 1/4 of the total area of the world, but they contain 3/4 of the world human population. And this overexploitation of resources and deforestation have become rampant to fulfill the needs of large population. Okay, so at this condition we need to overexploit resources or overexploit the nature, and also this make deforestation, and this make the needs of to fulfill the needs of large population. As this tropical rainforest contain 50% of the species on earth, destruction of natural habitats have provided disasters for the entire biosphere. Now, natural calamities such as earthquake, floods, volcanic eruptions, forest fires, droughts, etc. cause damage to the flora and fauna of the earth, bringing change in the biodiversity of respective affected regions. Pesticides and other pollutants such as hydrocarbons and toxic heavy metals destroy and weaken sensitive species. Species which are not the natural inhabitants of local habitats but are introduced into the system are called exotic species. Okay, so what are exotic species? They are the species which are not the natural inhabitants of the local habitat and they are introduced into the system, and these are called exotic species. And there are many examples when a natural biotic community of the ecosystem suffered extensive damage because of the introduction of exotic species. During the last few decades, some animals like tiger, elephants, rhinoceros, crocodiles, minks and birds were hunted mercilessly by poachers for their horn, tusk, hits, etc. It has resulted in the rendering of certain types of organisms as endangered category. Now, the International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, that is IUCN, has clarified the threatened species of plants and animals into 3 categories for the purpose of their conservation. First one, the endangered species. It includes those species which are in danger of extinction. The IUCN publishes the information about endangered species worldwide as the red list of threatened species. Second one is the vulnerable species. This includes the species which are likely to be in danger of extinction in near future if the factors threatening to their extinction continue. Survival of these species is not assured as their population has reduced greatly. Now third one, rare species. The population of these species is very small in the world. They are confined to limited areas or thinly scattered over a wider area. Now, conservation of biodiversity. Biodiversity is important for human existence. All forms of life are so closely interlinked and disturbance in one gives rise to imbalance in the others. Okay, so these all are interlinked, and if there is any disturbance in one lives, it creates rise into imbalance in others also. If species of plants and animals become endangered, they cause degradation in the environment, which may threaten human beings' own existence. Now, there is an urgent need to educate people to adopt environment-friendly practices and reorient their activities in such a way that the development is harmonious with other life forms is sustainable. Okay, so we should focus on sustainable development. There is an increasing consciousness of the fact that such conservation or suitable use is possible only with the involvement of the cooperation of local communities and individuals. Okay, so for a sustainable development, we should focus on the focus to include the local communities and individuals. For this, development of institutional structures at local level is necessary. The critical problem is not merely the conservation of species nor the habitat, but the continuation of process of conservation. Now, the government of India along with 155 other nations have signed the Conservation of Biodiversity at the Earth Summit held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in June 1992. The World Conservation Strategy has suggested the following steps for biodiversity conservation. First one, effort should be made to preserve the species that are endangered. Second one, prevention of extinction requires proper planning and management. Third one, varieties of food crops, foraged plants, timber trees, livestock, animals, and their wild relatives should be preserved. Fourth one, each country should identify habitat of wild relatives and ensure their protection. Fifth one, habitats where species feed, breed, rest, and nurse their young should be safeguarded and protected. And final one, international trade in wild plants and animals be regulated. Now, to protect, preserve, and propagate the variety of species within natural boundaries, the Government of India passed the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, under which national parks and sanctuaries were established and biosphere reserves declared. There are some countries which are situated in the tropical regions. They possess a large number of the world's species diversity, and they are called mega diversity center. Okay, so in some countries they possess or they have a large number of birds species diversity, and they are called mega diversity center. So there are 12 such countries, namely Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Democratic Republic of Congo, Madagascar, China, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia, in which these centers are located. Okay, so these are the 12 such countries. In order to concentrate resources on those areas that are most vulnerable, the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, that is the IUCN, has identified certain areas as biodiversity hotspots. Hotspots are defined according to their vegetation. Plants are important because these determine the primary productivity of an ecosystem. So we know that plants are the primary producers of the ecosystem. So these are important. Most but not all of the hotspots rely on species-rich ecosystem for food, firewood, cropland, and income from timber. In Madagascar, for example, about 85% of the plants and animals are found nowhere else in the world. Other hotspots in wealthy countries are facing different types of pressures. The islands of Hawaii have many unique plants and animals that are threatened by introduced species and land development. Okay, so that's about the chapter. If you have any doubts, you can comment below. For more videos, do like, share, subscribe.